Welcome everybody to season 1 of From Bed to Dead. I'm Jason Campbell, and finally we've gotten a chance with this COVID situation to get together and finish up our episodes and be able to start getting everything out to you guys and promoted, so that way you guys can get a chance to see some of the kills that we had on film this year, hear some of the stories that these guys put on camera, and being able to explain it back to you. Hopefully you'll be able to learn a few things along the way of our explanations of why we sat where we did, some of the tactics that we used to kill some of the deer that we killed this year. In our first episode this year, we're going to detail the 2 buck kills that I had this year and give you the reasons why I set up like I did, what time of the season it was, all the little nuances of why and what my season entailed this year.
In October, Jason's dad was actually able to punch his tag on this Michigan buck out of a DeQuisto Series 1.0.
The first buck I shot this year was October 27th. I was fortunate enough to draw a tag from the 16th through the 31st this year. And I've known this area really well. I've hunted a lot over the years. And a few years back, I found an area and started kind of learning it, putting the pieces together, and went in there a week from the time my hunt started on the 16th. I was scouting and went into this area, located a really good buck. I saw him only once, but his sign was showing up. I knew he was a buck that I really wanted to pursue and go after. I kept not getting the wins that I wanted to get in order to get in this place, and the only way to access this particular area was to go in by boat. So I had took my canoe. I have a 6-horse Yamaha, newer motor on the back, so it's really quiet. And it had rained really hard last year, and for several days in a row. And we were waiting for the rain to let up to get back in this area, and I kept watching the weather forecast, and finally we had a break where it was going to stop raining about an hour after daylight. So my son and I had all of our stuff prepared, waited in the parking lot until the rain started to let up. I was watching the Doppler on my phone, making sure that everything was where it needed to be. With camera gear and everything else, it's really difficult to get out there and get wet. You don't want to ruin anything. And as soon as it started sprinkling, I told him, let's get everything unloaded and get going down the river to get back into this location. Finally got everything loaded up, slipped down into this location. I cut the motor off about 200 yards from where we were going and just kind of coasted up in the spot, just running it off idle, nice and smooth. Got out, got all of our stuff unloaded quietly, went to the spot that I wanted to set up in. Finally got my stick set up, one stand. My son was at the base of the tree. I was trying to pull up the second stand, and I kept looking down where I expected the deer to come from, because at this time it had stopped raining and I knew that the deer were on their feet. October 27th is that starting to be that magical time of the year when your mature bucks are up on their feet. They're, scent checking areas, they're marking scrapes, doing all that, rutty activity before the rut starts. And I knew that this buck liked this particular bedding area, and I was banking on the fact that he would have been in this crop field, which was about a mile away, and there was kind of a longer transition to get back to this bedding area. And so I kept looking back behind me as I was setting up, and the second time I looked back, I happened to see him about 125, maybe 130 yards out, and he was slowly making his way down this transition to this travel corridor back into this bedding area. And my bow was on the ground. I didn't have much time to really do anything. My pack was still there, didn't have my release anything. So I hurry up and jumped down, climbed down out of the tree, got down on the ground. My son turns around, he's looking at me, he's going, hey, what's going on? I said, there's a big buck coming, get behind me. He, got my release out of my pack, which was right on the front. I'm particular about how I pack my pack, and, it ended up paying off for me in this aspect, because I was able to quickly locate, my release, strap my release on. I didn't have time to get the video camera out. I pushed the Tacticam to get as much footage as I possibly can of it, and waited for this buck to close a distance. Our wind was coming from the southeast, pushing northwest, which was perfect in our favor. This deer had no chance of winding us at all. So as he approached, we could hear him coming through the grass, closer and closer and closer. And there was a pretty good sized tree between me and the deer, which would end up having him pass maybe at like 10, 12 yards away. As he finally got closer to me and hit that tree, I drew my bow, and I was crouched down on this bigger tree that we were behind. My son was behind me, drew my bow, he come out, I slightly raised up, stopped him, drilled him, he ran, took off back towards where we had parked the boat. We were full of excitement. I mean, you know, that situation, I got one staying on the ground, getting ready to hang it. You know, it just, how it happened was so quick and kind of such a close encounter that, you know, we were super pumped. And as you'll see in the video, you know, I happened to slip up and say a couple choice words that we ended up having to edit out of the footage. And I ended up grabbing up my GoPro to do the rest of the film footage on him. After, you know, I had watched the deer fall down within 50 yards of us, we ended up going over there to the deer to recover him. He ended up dying 5 yards from where we parked the boat, so it was a really short drag. A deer scored a little over 150 inches. I was stoked on cloud nine, you know, so, and being able to share that hunt with my son, you know, and being able to be in a position to harvest a deer like that was really something I'll never forget.
Smoke the monster! Smoke the fucking monster! Monster, he's going down! Oh my god, setting up the stand! Came in, oh my god. We waited for the rain to come out, we tried to sneak up a stand, and I'm in the stand, setting it up. As you can see, look at this. Setting up, and this buck comes in. Oh my god, dude! Yes, I got my son with me. This is awesome. I hurry up and climb down, almost jumped off the last peg. Wind is blowing in our favor, perfect. And he comes sneaking right down the dike. Huge, huge buck. Setting up my sticks to get a stand up. I got one stand up, and I look down this path, and there is a monster coming. I literally flew down the tree, jumped the last peg. It's a little windy. Show everybody this. That's how close he died to the boat. Unbelievable. Hell of a deer, giant of a buck. I mean, we got a 5-yard drag, if not, I mean, 10 yards. I mean, that's like the perfect thing. This right here is a godsend. That Yamaha motor on the back, so quiet. Like literally we cut the motor off and drifted up here. What a move. I'm just happy that we waited the rain out, and I knew to get in the stand this time of the year. As soon as the rain's over, the bucks are gonna be on their feet.
The reason why we were hunting that location was because of the food source quite a distance away from where the bedding area was. From that week of scouting, you know, when I got on there, there were big tracks, there were a couple nice rubs, some pretty big scrapes, and a really defined trail that was coming down this pinch point into this bedding. And all the signs were telling me that this deer was in there. And when we came back, and upon further investigation after the kill, we got to see the fresh sign that was in there, and being able to set up on that hot sign, knowing the time of the year it was, going in there with the wind conditions to our favor, really ended up being, you know, the key components to being able to put myself in that situation to be able to harvest that animal. Knowing that my hunt was ending the 31st, and having prior knowledge in this area and have hunting it years in the past, I still had my second buck tag on me. And the very next night, I decided to slip into an area that has a small finger that maybe 20, 30 yards wide of a dry area that has a few little islands that the deer will bed on. And I kind of took it on faith from prior knowledge that by going in there, if there was a big deer in the area, there's always rubs in a specific location that leads to this dry strip of land that they kind of travel down because there's water everywhere. And it took me using full chest waders, and there was a couple times in there that I was only able, you know, on my tippy toes to get through water to get to this dry location. Got my stand set up. Again, at that time, I ended up dropping my original camera, my Canon, in the water and end up frying it. And the only thing I had on me was my Tacticam and my GoPro. So I was kind of trying to do the best I could at filming this, this hunt particularly. And as we sat there for that evening, I noticed, using my binos, in the distance, maybe 200-300 yards back, I could see these does that were up feeding, and they were starting to make their way towards us. I caught a glimpse of a buck, and I pulled my binos up again and saw a young 2.5-year-old 8-point in there. And then maybe 5 or 10 minutes later, I noticed his behavior change, and he kind of went the other direction, and a bigger buck decided to come out, and he was following those does, and kind of, he wasn't really dogging them, but he was kind of doing what they were doing. And I knew that this deer was going to come traveling down this location. Behind me to my west were several crop fields that were beans and corn, and I knew normally that's the preferred food source at that time in that location. There's not really a lot of acorns on the ground in there. That's where most of the deer end up migrating to. And I grabbed my grunt tube out because it was starting to get dark. We had maybe 45 minutes of good film, light left. He was still out there a couple hundred yards. I grabbed my grunt tube up. I shot him a couple grunts. I seen him look our way, and then I threw a snort wheeze out, and he heard it, instantly changed his demeanor, and started coming across the dry plateau of that little strip that I was telling you about, coming right down to us. He ended up closing the distance and ended up making his way to about 3 yards underneath the tree. And our thermals were pulling, and our wind was a really iffy wind that night. We like to try to hunt a just off wind, which is what we had, but our winds were shifting slightly. And I noticed that as the wind died down that evening, that our thermals from, I had been dropping some milkweed out, were starting to drop down to the base of the tree. So when that deer closed the distance, I could hear him sniffing, and I knew that he was almost straight underneath of me, straight on. I knew that if I was going to put a shot on him, I wasn't going to be able to wait for a perfect broadside shot or a quartering two shot. And I have shot a few deer over the years that have been right underneath me, and I know if you hit them right behind the shoulder blades, it's a very fatal shot. The only issue is most of the time you don't get a pass through, and with your arrow being high up on the deer, the blood trail is going to be really sparse. Mix that in with the water situation, with how much water there was in the area. I knew that it was going to be a difficult situation to track that deer if we could. I drew my bow back, settled my pin on him, hit him. He bolted out. We watched him run behind us about 60-70 yards, and he fell over. We sat in the tree for the remaining 45 minutes or so of dark. Maybe there was a half hour left. When you're in that moment, you don't really, time it goes by so quickly, but then it takes so long to get there because you're excited. You want to get down and find that deer. And we heard him get up about 5 minutes after dark and heard him splash through, and I thought I heard him crash again. We got down, immediately picked up the blood trail on the dry strip that led over to where it was, followed the blood trail for about 70 yards or so, and we could find bubbles in the blood. It looked like definitely a good hit, and then we hit a spot where it was all water, and we lost the blood trail. I must have combed the area for 2-3 hours that night, decided that I was going to come back the next day and look for this deer. I had a few people on a call list that had tracking dogs, and I gave them a call to see if they could come back the next day to track, but because the water was so high, they said the chances of the dog being able to actually pick up the scent was going to be real slim. And then that next day it rained, and then it rained again, and it rained again. And I couldn't even get back in there with my waders to even get back and look for him. And I knew that if I was going to find that deer, I was going to have to wait for the water to finally let loose. January 9th, I went back in there. We were small game hunting. You know, we like to do that in the fall or in the after season, because as you're scouting, it gives you kind of something fun to do, especially with your kids. You can, you know, small game hunt, rabbit hunt, squirrel hunt, whatever it is that you're wanting to pursue, and then we get to scout at the same time. We went to the exact area where I thought that deer might have been, and after some searching, we came up on the remains of a deer, and were able to match up the video footage with the horns. And because of the deer's characteristics, he had a horn that came out of the base of his skull, and how his one side was, it was 100% him. And I can't express the relief that I found, knowing that, you know, I had killed that deer. Knowing that he was only 70 yards from the last spot of where I lost the blood was kind of disappointing. The yotes had totally made a mess of him. But I was fortunate enough to find him and actually be able to bring him out as a deadhead, and ended up taking him to the taxidermist, and was fortunate enough to harvest that second buck. Okay, so it's January 9th today, and I shot a buck earlier in the year this year, and one of the places that we went to, it had gotten really flooded out, and there was some dry spots in the high ground in the area. So we're hoping to swing over here and see if we can't find my buck from this year. I know the chances are low, but I felt very confident when I shot the deer that the deer was going to die. It's been eating at me all year long about getting back in here and seeing if I can't find him. So the rack is going to be an unmistakable rack. Like, I mean, if we find it, we're going to know 100% what it looks like. So that's the good part of it. And having that video to be able to match it up is even better. So.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
What? Did you find him? Dude!
Oh my God!
Oh my gosh!
What is the odds?
I don't know, dude. It's a massacre, dude. Holy crap! Look how big he is.
Lex.
Oh my gosh! Hold him up! Hold on, dude. He's nuts.
Oh my God! I gave up on this deer, thinking that it wasn't him. Oh my Lord!
I can tell you what, the yotes definitely got him.
But that's him. He's got that side on the one side. Wow. I didn't think I was going to find this deer this year.
All of us at From Bed to Dead want to say a big thank you to all of you guys out there that are supporting us, and for your continued support and following us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram. You know, this was our first season, and being a 2019, with our episodes that we come out with, we were fortunate enough to harvest some pretty good Michigan caliber deer on public land, some of them on private. And you know, it's very difficult in the season to be able to pursue these animals that we love so much, that this coming season 2020, we really put forth the effort to bring a better quality video to you guys, to get more descriptive about what we're doing, getting on a lot of our deer, our target deer that we're going after. And we got some really nice caliber deer that we're going after, a lot of trail cam photos, and a lot of storylines that we're going to be putting together for you. So we just wanted to tell you guys thank you, and we hope that you like our show, and hope you keep tuning in, and thanks for your support.